It was a bright Monday morning when Simone Harris arrived at the front entrance of the luxurious Astoria Grand Hotel, one of the city's most prestigious landmarks. Dressed in a crisp ivory pantsuit and leather heels, she looked confident, calm, and entirely at ease. Her natural curls were pinned back in a stylish bun, and she carried a sleek black briefcase with gold accents. To the average passerby, she may have seemed like a guest, or perhaps a high-level consultant. But Simone wasn't just checking in. She had a meeting scheduled on the top floor, in the executive boardroom she'd personally redesigned. As she crossed the lobby, admiring the fresh orchids and the clean marble floors she had approved herself, a voice pierced the atmosphere. "Excuse me, you can't go in there." Simone turned calmly. A middle-aged white woman in yoga attire, with a name-tagged badge clipped to her handbag, marched toward her. Her face was tight with forced authority and passive-aggressive suspicion. "This is a private hotel. The entrance to the conference area is for guests with permission only," the woman said, emphasizing her words with a practiced Karen-like smugness. Simone blinked. "I know. I'm calling security," the woman snapped, pulling out her phone. "You people can't just wander in here like this." Simone exhaled slowly. She didn't yell. She didn't flinch. Instead, she simply stepped aside, pulled out her phone, and sent a text. "I'll wait," Simone said. Minutes later, two sharply dressed security officers appeared. Not at the woman's side, but at Simone's. "Ms. Harris, we've been expecting you," one said respectfully. Karen's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Simone gave a tight, polite smile. "Yes, I'm Simone Harris. I'm here to review final lease paperwork with the board. I own this building." Silence fell like a thunderclap in the center of the lobby. Karen's jaw tightened. Simone didn't gloat. She didn't need to. With grace and confidence, she turned toward the elevator, flanked by the very security that had been called on her, and pressed the button for the top floor. And just like that, the tone of the day, and of the entire hotel, changed. Upstairs on the 30th floor, the executive boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the skyline. The morning sun bathed the polished wooden table in a soft glow, and a tray of fresh pastries and coffee had already been set out. Simone entered with poise. A few board members, mostly older white men in tailored suits, stood up as she walked in. Some offered warm greetings, others nodded with cautious respect. But one thing was clear. Her presence commanded the room. She wasn't new to this. Simone had spent the past 12 years building a real estate empire from the ground up. From flipping duplexes in struggling neighborhoods to developing mid-sized commercial properties, she had worked, learned, failed, and rebuilt. This hotel, the Astoria Grand, was her most ambitious project yet, and now it was fully hers. Today's meeting wasn't about acquisition. That had been finalized 2 months ago. Today was about long-term planning, strategy, and staff retention. She set down her briefcase and took her seat at the head of the table. As the meeting began, one of the executives hesitated. He glanced down at his notes, then at Simone. "Ms. Harris, before we dive in," he said carefully, "we heard there was an incident downstairs?" Simone didn't raise her voice. "Yes, one of the part-time yoga instructors tried to have me removed from the premises." A tense silence followed. Someone coughed awkwardly. Another sipped his coffee. "She assumed I didn't belong here," Simone added. Again. That last word hung in the air. Simone had dealt with it before. Being followed in stores, being questioned in luxury buildings, being asked if she was with catering. Even in spaces she'd built herself. But what made her different wasn't just her success. It was her refusal to let these moments define her. She turned the page of her planner. "I'd like to talk about staff training," she said smoothly. "All employees should know who owns the building. But more importantly, they should know how to treat people who walk through our doors, no matter what they look like." The room nodded in agreement. It was clear. Simone wasn't just here to collect rent. She was here to change the culture. Later that afternoon, Simone walked through the lobby once again, this time with a different purpose. The earlier encounter still echoed faintly in her mind. Not because it surprised her, but because it confirmed what she had always known. Perception mattered more to some people than reality. But now, she was determined to turn that uncomfortable moment into a teaching opportunity. She stopped by the front desk, where a young black receptionist named Tamika smiled as she approached. "Ms. Harris, good afternoon," Tamika greeted warmly. "Afternoon, Tamika. Can you let the wellness staff know I'd like to meet with them for a few minutes in the lounge?" Simone asked. Tamika nodded. "Of course." 15 minutes later, a small group had gathered in the employee lounge, including the woman from earlier, whose name Simone now recalled was Lisa. Lisa stood stiffly in the back, arms crossed, her cheeks still slightly red from embarrassment. Simone stepped to the front, calm and composed. "I want to thank you all for meeting with me," she began. "I know this is outside of your usual schedule, but what happened this morning brought something important to light." Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Simone didn't call her out by name. She didn't need to. Her tone was firm, but not angry. "This hotel represents excellence," she continued. "No, and excellence means treating every guest and every person with dignity, without assumptions, without judgment." A few staff members nodded quietly. One young employee murmured a soft, "Amen." "I've worked too hard to own a place where bias still greets people at the door," Simone said. "That's not who we are, and it's not who we will become." She let the moment linger, then added, "Training for all front-facing staff begins next week. We'll be implementing a new hospitality and inclusion policy, and I'll be involved personally." For a brief moment, no one moved. Then Tamika clapped. Another employee joined. Within seconds, the room filled with quiet but genuine applause. Even Lisa, though clearly uncomfortable, looked down and gave a small, slow nod. Simone didn't want apologies. She wanted progress. And now, she had set it in motion. The next day, news of the incident had spread quietly through the hotel staff. Not as a scandal, but as a shift. People were talking. Not in hushed gossip, but in real, reflective conversations. Simone, meanwhile, was back in her office on the 31st floor. A bright, modern space with abstract art on the walls, shelves lined with business books, and a large window that overlooked the city she helped shape. As she reviewed renovation proposals for the rooftop lounge, her assistant knocked. "Miss Harris? You have a visitor. Says she's from the press." Simone raised an eyebrow. "The press?" "She said it's a feature on Black women in leadership. She asked for you specifically." Simone stood curious and smoothed her blazer. "Send her in." The journalist, a poised young woman named Jordan, entered with a warm smile and a notebook in hand. "I'm not here to dig up drama," she said immediately, as if reading Simone's mind. "But I heard what happened yesterday. And I've heard what you've done with this building. That's what I want to talk about." Simone gestured for her to sit. Over the next hour, Jordan asked thoughtful questions about Simone's journey from humble beginnings, about the barriers she faced in the real estate world, and about what it meant to be a Black woman owning one of the most prominent hotel properties in the city. "Most people think success erases discrimination," Jordan said softly. Simone nodded. "It doesn't. But it does give you the power to challenge it. Quietly, visibly, permanently." By the time the interview ended, Jordan was glowing with inspiration. "Thank you," she said, standing. "I think this piece is going to matter to a lot of people." Simone smiled. "Good. Then we've done more than build a hotel." When Jordan left, Simone turned to the window, sipping her coffee slowly. Down below, guests came and went, none of them knowing the full story behind the building's owner. And that was okay. She wasn't here to be recognized. She was here to rebuild what so many had tried to gatekeep. 2 days later, Simone decided to do something she rarely had time for. Walk the entire hotel, floor by floor, not as an owner, but as an observer. She dressed casually, black slacks, a soft gray blouse, and her natural curls pulled back. No press entourage, no clipboard, no name tag. Just her eyes and ears open. On the 8th floor, she paused near the conference center, where a large corporate seminar was taking place. Dozens of attendees, mostly white professionals, milled about during a coffee break. Simone leaned against the wall, unnoticed, watching how the staff moved, polite, efficient, professional. She smiled to herself, until a voice broke the moment. "Excuse me, ma'am, This area is for registered guests. Simone turned to see a well-dressed man, mid-50s, with a conference badge and a condescending smile. He looked at her with mild suspicion, not aggression, but clear dismissal. "I'm aware," Simone said calmly. "You with housekeeping?" he asked, looking at her blouse and simple earrings. "No," she replied, "but I do keep this house in order." Before he could reply, the hotel's events manager came around the corner and lit up at the sight of her. "Miss Harris! I didn't know you were coming down." The man's expression shifted instantly. "Wait, you're—" Simone extended her hand. "Simone Harris? I own the building." The man's face went pale. He fumbled an apology, something about not meaning offense, how it was just a misunderstanding. Simone simply nodded. "I'm used to it, but maybe don't assume next time." As she walked away, the moment hung in the air. Another lesson, silently delivered. Back in the lobby, she caught a glimpse of Lisa, the yoga instructor from earlier that week. Lisa stood beside the new staff bulletin board, reading something posted at eye level. Simone walked up beside her. The board now displayed a framed sign. "Respect is not optional." "It's the standard." Lisa glanced at Simone and said quietly, "I deserved what you said in that meeting." Simone looked at her. "Then use it. Be better." Lisa nodded. And just like that, growth happened. Not loudly, but clearly. Later that week, Simone attended the quarterly hotel board meeting. Not as a silent investor, but as its most respected voice. Held in the executive conference room on the top floor, the meeting brought together key stakeholders, department heads, and a few board members flown in from out of state. As she entered, the room quieted. Some still underestimated her, seeing only her youth, her skin, her gender. But they always left the meeting knowing exactly who ran the show. "Let's begin," she said confidently, taking her place at the head of the table. The meeting covered occupancy rates, renovations, guest reviews, and upcoming events. But when it came time to discuss staff development, Simone made a point. "We're not just building luxury," she said. "We're building equity." One board member, an older man with decades in hospitality, looked skeptical. "Simone, with respect, do you think diversity is a selling point for our kind of clientele?" Simone met his gaze. "I think it's a human point, one we can no longer afford to ignore." There was a pause. Then the room nodded, some more hesitantly than others, but the momentum was shifting. After the meeting, several junior staff members who had sat in as observers approached her in the hallway. "I've never seen anyone say that in a boardroom," one young black woman whispered, eyes wide with admiration. Simone smiled. "Then maybe you're next." That evening, back in her suite, Simone received a message from the hotel's front desk. "A guest would like to meet with you privately," it read. "Says it's urgent, but not an emergency." She almost declined. It had been a long day, but something in her gut told her to say yes. 20 minutes later, she walked into a quiet corner lounge where a familiar woman stood nervously. Lisa. She looked different, not just in clothing, but in posture. "I wanted to say something," Lisa began. "The other day, when I judged you, I keep replaying it in my head." "I was wrong." Simone let her speak. "I've been teaching yoga for years, telling people to be present, to be compassionate, and I failed my own practice. You showed grace. I want to be better. If you'll allow me to stay, I promise I'll prove it." Simone studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Growth starts with awareness," she said. "Let's see where you take it." Graduation weekend brought a new wave of guests to the hotel. Proud parents, nervous students, laughter echoing in the hallways, and caps tucked neatly into garment bags. The building felt alive with hope. Simone walked through the lobby slowly that Saturday morning, not as a CEO overseeing operations, but as a woman reflecting on what this place had become. Not just a hotel, but a symbol. At the front desk, she overheard a conversation. An elderly black couple was checking in. The wife clutched a bouquet of flowers. The husband's voice cracked slightly as he spoke. "We never thought we'd be back here," he said to the concierge. "Our daughter's walking the stage today. We stayed in this hotel once, long ago. We couldn't afford it then. We can now." Simone smiled quietly and turned away before they saw her. It wasn't about recognition. It was about legacy. Later that afternoon, the hotel hosted a private luncheon in the rooftop garden, a catered event for graduates from the local HBCU and their families. Simone had funded it quietly, in partnership with a local nonprofit. As she stood near the buffet, a young woman approached her, holding a glass of lemonade. "Ms. Harris?" she asked, wide-eyed. You're, you're the owner, right?" Simone nodded. "I am. My mom told me what happened here last week. With the security call. I just want you to know, it meant something. You standing your ground like that?" Simone looked at her, bright, bold, ready to lead. "It's your ground too," Simone said softly. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As the sun set over the skyline, the rooftop buzzed with celebration. Laughter, speeches, dancing. And no one questioned Simone's presence. She wasn't the outsider anymore. She was the reason this space existed. Downstairs, in the staff lounge, someone had taped a printed quote to the wall next to the time clock. "Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it just holds the keys." And on the marble plaque at the hotel's entrance, the one that thousands passed by every day, a new line had been added under her name. Owner, leader, unapologetically present.